now that the modern no ban list season, what are we calling this? No ban list winter is underway, and we've got all these shakeups in the modern format. It's time to start getting into the thick of things. We got an RCQ coming up in, or an RC coming up in March. We've got SCG Atlanta coming up in January. It's time to get some lists settled in so we can go do well in some major events. Um, Dimir FrogTide, always near and dear to the heart. Always excited to run through the deck, see how it performs. Now, I do have to say before we get into the thick of things in this video, it is a voiceover league. This was a league that I played in the middle of a challenge, I think like Thursday night, Friday night, something like that. So if voiceover leagues aren't your thing, you're more than welcome to hop on to the next video. No frog pun intended. But if you want to learn something, here's some explanations, some line breakdowns, then hopefully this will be a pretty good video for you. As always, if you enjoy the content, enjoy the commentary, links down below to the deck list, to all the socials, all that stuff. Come hang out over on Twitch or YouTube, or better yet, come join the Discord. Come talk about the decks over there. But as you can see from not only the thumbnail, but the deck list on screen here, we've got no unbanned cards in the 75. So who needs to do broken stuff like Faithless Looting and Green Sun Zenith and Mox Opal and Splinter Twin when you can just hit people in the face with Psychic Frogs and cast Harbinger of the Seas and Murktide Regents and all that fun stuff. And honestly, I'm okay with that because Dimir's been a very good player for us for a while now. It's been very consistent. As you can see, there is no Oculus package in the deck. I think the Oculus package is good. I'm not against the Oculus package. I think the Murktide package is consistent. So if I want a baseline for how Dimir is performing in a metagame, I like going with a more Murktide heavy base list because the Oculus list is always going to have more highs and lows. It's going to have more hands that have a couple unearths and nothing to unearth. It's going to have more hands with an uncastable Oculus, things like that. If I go to traditional Murktide or FrogTide, it's going to be more consistent. So if I want to know how like counter spells are performing and some of these threats are performing and how interaction is doing in the meta, this is the deck I'm going to go with 9 times out of 10. Some of the big main deck and sideboard differences compared to other lists. 2 main deck Nihil Spellbomb. Definitely not something you see all that often. I saw another list that was running 2 main deck Spellbomb, 2 sideboard Spellbomb, and I was like, I'm going to try that out. So that's how I came to that conclusion. I do think Grave Hate's pretty good right now. You got a lot of like Hollow One decks that care about the graveyard. You've got opposing Oculus decks that care about the graveyard. Seeing random things like Dredge pop up with Faithless Looting. So there are a lot of good targets to nuke the yard against. We've got 3 Thoughtseize. Obviously, we're in a bit of a combo meta right now. So being able to interact with the unfair stuff proactively, very helpful. 4 Fatal Push, a Cling to Dust, 3 Spell Snare. I had somebody else trophy with this list and asked what the reasoning was behind the 3 Spell Snare. Honestly, it's just a trying numbers out thing. I've tried out 3 Spell Snare. I've tried out 2 Spell Snare and a Spell Pierce. I've tried out a Snare and 2 Pierce. I've tried trimming on that slot. No real rhyme or reason. Just happened to be the number that I was on this time. 4 Preordain, 4 Counterspell, 4 Orcish Bowmaster. I think Orcish Bowmaster is an extremely underrated card in the current meta. A lot of Faithless Lootings running around. A lot of random draw effects, like Mishra's Bauble out of Delirium decks. I've seen a bunch of Stars and Spheres out of random Mox Opal kind of combo decks. Being able to interact with those things, really nice. A Long Goodbye and a Shoot the Sheriff. The Shoot the Sheriff mostly for opposing Murktides. Long Goodbye, really, really good against Splinter Twin targets, good against opposing Psychic Frogs, things like Emery that you want to interact with proactively. 4 Psychic Frog, 3 Force Negation, 2 Harbinger of the Seas. Again, another one of those cards, kind of like Nihil Spellbomb, I think randomly has some decks you can hose out of the main deck, so I wanted to give it a shot. 3 Murktide Regent, 2 Sink into Stupor. Over to the sideboard. My allergies are kind of acting up, so if you see me stop for a second, I'm probably like trying not to sneeze. In the sideboard, that way, sorry. 4 Consignment Memory, 2 Stern Scolding, 3 Hercules Recall. Since we're not splashing for Meltdown, we need some good artifact hate. A Mystical Dispute, a Toxic Deluge, a Graveyard Trespasser, a Surgical Extraction, and 2 Nihil Spellbomb. So that's the main deck. I think it's solid. It does still have some numbers I would like to fix up a little bit, but I think it's just like a baseline to try out. It's pretty reasonable. So we'll just get into the rounds here. You can kind of get an idea how the deck works, making an informed opinion yourself. All right. Making note of a time stamp here when this one starts. 25. All right. Can we pause? Yeah, we can pause. So, first round, we are on the draw. We've got a reasonable hand with some interaction. Psychic Frog, Murktide, kind of all you want to see. I'd like to see a counter spell, but if we don't have one, we don't have one. Just hope we're up against a creature deck. Opponent leading on an Urza Saga. Usually, if you see a Saga on like turn 2 or turn 3, it's probably a fair Saga deck, like a Hammertime, a Underworld Breach combo deck. I know that's not fair, but it's not a deck that's trying to like win the game with getting something off of Saga. If you see a Saga on turn 1, it's probably something like Amulet Titan that needs to find something off the Saga to win, which is important when you're looking at a hand like this, because now I know, oh, these Fatal Pushes are probably dead. I need to be leading on Flooded Strand to try to find a counter spell. So, hence, lead on Flooded Strand. Find the counter spell anyway, but you know, what are you going to do? Turn 2 Mirror Pool means Amulet Titan. Easy. Okay. This was a mistake on my part. Turn 2, I could play out the frog, and I chose not to. I chose to hold up the counter spell. And I think this is mostly PTSD from the One Ring. I was thinking, okay, they float mana, they go get a One Ring, or they go get a Amulet, play a bounce land, play a scary 4-drop, and I want to have counterspell up for that. Without the One Ring, there's not really scary 1-drops they can have. And if they do go get an Amulet and then play another Amulet from hand and a bounce land, they only have the 1 mana from Mirror Pool and the 4 from the bounce land, which is not enough for Primeval Titan. So I should have just jammed the frog here and had it out on the battlefield, but I was playing scared of a card that I didn't need to play scared of because it's not in the format anymore. So yeah, opponent just like plays another Saga here and passes. And thankfully that top deck Thoughtseize is pretty solid. Let's get their hand up here. So we see they had Primeval Titan, Arboreal Grazer, Green Suns, Vesuva, Scape Shift, Splunking. They don't have a bounce land. Pretty important. Vesuva could copy something like Urza Saga if they want to just start making tokens. Take the Primeval Titan because I don't want them to just like top deck a bounce land and have the ability to get it out early. Because if they top deck a bounce land and they go bounce land, go up to 4, play Grazer, go up to 6, Spelunking. I guess they can't get up to Titan. Yeah, oh well. Taking the Titan anyway. The Green Suns is more expensive. So take the cheaper Titan. They're going to Vesuva, buy Surveil land. And now they have the ability to make a token off of their Urza Saga. So we're going to swing in. Push the token because I want to get this frog in. Another Thoughtseize is really nice. So now I can take the Green Sun Zenith. Just jam out a Murktide and say, hey, you've got a top deck. You've got to top deck a Titan here. The Spelunking I don't care about. The Arboreal Grazer I don't care about. I will say, so opponent found third Amulet off of the Saga, and they found a Crumbling Vestige. They can only make one colored mana here. Alright, so yeah, this was fine. I think if they had found a bounce land, we could have been in a lot of trouble. If they had found the blue-green bounce land, a Simic Growth Chamber, made a bunch of mana, Scape Shift. They could have just Scape Shifted for like a bounce land in a Teleria West and been able to get a Titan, play a Titan, get another Titan, play another Titan. So yeah, bounce land, we would have been in a lot of trouble. But they didn't find a bounce land, so we're going to have Counterspell. Sweet. On to game number 2. Let's talk about some sideboarding a little bit. So magnify out our sideboard. Long Goodbye, not very good. Fatal Push, also not too thrilling, but Fatal Push is a little more efficient at killing construct tokens. Long Goodbye, just like more expensive at killing tokens. Also doesn't kill Titan, so it usually gets the axe. The Nihil Spell Bombs in the main aren't doing a whole lot. Spell Snare, pretty bad. Boarding in the Consign to Memories because they hit like the search off of Urza Saga. They hit Amulet. They hit the ETB off Titan. There's some really funny early time walk turns you can have with like consigning an Amulet trigger on something like a bounce land. What else did I board in? 4 consigns. I think that might be it. No. We'll figure it out. Not that important. Consigns are like the important one. Opening hand, pretty reasonable. We just have like a Thoughtseize and Counterspell. This random Bowmaster here. Take the Arboreal Grazer because we're hopefully going to play out Bowmaster. We don't really care if they dismember that. And Dismember is not going to be big enough to deal with our Murktide Regent. They pick up a Spelunking. Thankfully, they are kind enough to play out that Otawara for us, so we don't have to worry about that for our Murktide. Now, obviously, they could find a bounce land, and that changes up a bit, but until they do, I'm not going to care. Also, to note with Consign to Memory, on things like bounce lands, if they have a land on the battlefield you don't want them returning, it's okay to like aggressively consign the bounce land, the return trigger, to stop them from getting like a Teleria West back in hand. All right, so with this Endurance, I let them Endurance me. After that resolves, I can go get another Undercity Sewers, start filling my graveyard back up, Fatal Push the Endurance. So I can hold up Counterspell. I know they've got Dismember and a Crumbling Vestige. Go for a second main phase Titan. Why they waited till second main phase for the Titan? I guess they thought I was going to F6. But It's it's very unlikely that I'm gonna F6 when you just showed me a flash threat like the turn before. So we've got Dismember and an Unknown. We're going to Surgical the Titans on their draw step. Looks like they picked up another Endurance. We'll just counterspell that because even if they have a Titan somehow to follow that up, I can just consign the Titan ETB trigger and attack them in the air with the big Murktide next turn. And they got to pay at least 2 life to the Dismember. All right, so on to round number 2. On the play, it's another one of these hands that like really cares about creatures. A little bit worse into something like Eldrazi. It's leading Eldrazi Temple into It That Heralds the End. I'm kind of thinking like Brood Scale combo. I don't know if that deck... I don't think that deck usually plays It That Heralds the End, but I couldn't really come up with a deck that I thought was like more likely. And then they go with this turn with Star Sphere, and I'm like, okay, well, Bowmaster looks phenomenal here. I still don't know what's going on. Some sort of Eldrazi Eggs deck. I got to go back over my ban update notes because I don't think Second Sunrise was unbanned. All right. Important sequencing. I've got this Bowmaster out on board in the face of a Chromatic Star and a Chromatic Sphere. I've got another Bowmaster in hand. My opponent's going for Lightning Bolt on my Bowmaster. If I let them Lightning Bolt my Bowmaster, there is a difference between Chromatic Star and Chromatic Sphere when it comes to being able to interact with the draw. So Chromatic Sphere has the sacrifice ability, the mana adding, and the draw card all in one line of, or all in one box of text. So all in one paragraph, which means that because adding mana is like a special action that you can't respond to, the draw card on Sphere is also something you can't respond to. So if I let them Lightning Bolt this Bowmaster and they go to crack Sphere, I can't respond by flashing in another Bowmaster and stopping them before they draw a card. Chromatic Star Chromatic Star, emphasis, is a little bit different. For it, you sack it, you add the mana, and then it's got another line of text, another text paragraph that says like when it hits the graveyard, draw a card. So that one, you would have it sack, add the mana, and then the triggered ability when it hits the graveyard goes on the stack. You can respond to that with Bowmaster and ping them, then draw a card, ping them again. So because of that, because they have the Sphere out, I need to respond to this Lightning Bolt with my second Bowmaster so that they never have an opportunity to draw off of Sphere while I have no Bowmaster on the battlefield. So that's why you see me respond to this Lightning Bolt. Because I want to make sure I'm getting extra pings here. More stars. Again, I have like no idea what they're doing. So I figure a counterspell on top's probably a good draw when you're unsure of what's going on. Especially when you got a Bowmaster into their 3A. So that is a Spawn Gang Commander. A card that I have never seen cast in a game of Modern. So it is I don't want to say functional reprint, kind of a flavor reprint off of Siege Gang Commander, the 5 mana red goblin that sacks goblins to ping stuff. Still no idea what's going on, but this is their last card in hand. So I'm just going to let them get their 0/1s, counter the actual body because I can't deal with that at the moment, and go from here. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I get to keep attacking. If they start cracking all these eggs, then maybe I'm able to take some stuff out. I know that if I hit their spawn tokens or go after their spawn tokens, they can sack them to stop me from growing my army token. But I need to get the chump blockers out of the way so that I can attack it. So that first targeted spawn is just to get the second blocker out of the way. I can fatal push the last one, but the other targets are all going upstairs just to try to get through to lethal. It's like I could sink into stupor a blocker, but I'd rather save sink into stupor for an actual spell. My Bowmaster plus token are up to lethal now, so all I got to do is take out this last blocker. Hold up sink into stupor for any payoff that could come around here. So you see this absolute, like, mad amount of eggs effects. I still have zero idea what's going on. I probably sideboarded horribly for this matchup because, again, I don't know what's going on. I didn't bring in Hercule's Recall. I didn't see Urza's Saga, though they probably have it. And all of their eggs, they can just like sack in response and draw cards. So I don't really want to just try to bounce it all when it doesn't really matter. Spell Snare. I saw the It That Betrays, but I still have Fatal Pushes. And I think that's like the only thing Spell Snare probably interacts with. I didn't see Brood Scale or any combo cards with Brood Scale, so I don't think it's Brood Scale. Same thing with Stern Scolding. Like, I don't want to board in 10 ways of dealing with It That Betrays if that's the only thing it deals with. But I saw this opening hand. Looked very reasonable as long as they don't do anything on turn 1. Dang. Well, at least we have Thoughtseize. Huh. That is Bombardment, Double Flesh Raker, It That Betrays, Ghost Vacuum. They don't have a red source right now, but Goblin Bombardment with multiple Flesh Rakers kind of goes off pretty hard. Yeah, tough one. So my immediate thought is they don't have a second land. If they whiff on their second land for a turn, I'm probably okay. I can like take the bombardment, stop them from going wide, or take a Flesh Raker, plan on next turn, like thought seizing away something else, and maybe consigning the second Flesh Raker if they find a land. Pretty much any combination of things I think is reasonable here. The only one I probably wouldn't consider very much is the It That Heralds the End, just because double it kind of gets like engulfed by Frog pretty quickly. As I take the It That Heralds because it's their only play. So I do think that was a bit of a mistake on my part. I think I should have left the It That Heralds and probably taken like the Goblin Bombardment. That way next turn I could just play out the Thoughtseize, take a Flesh Raker, hold up Consign for the other Flesh Raker, and if I find a land, just play a Frog. It's always humbling watching games back. But either way, them hitting their second land right away to be able to play a Flesh Raker is kind of GG's for me. So now at least I know it's some sort of like Flesh Raker combo deck. Like Flesh Raker, bunch of eggs, ping you out. Um, I guess the combo is you play Flesh Raker, play an egg, it makes a spawn. You can use the spawn to sack the egg to play another egg. I don't know what else they got going on, but let's go back to that mulligan decision real quick. All right, so this was changing up the sideboard a little bit. Took out some forces, brought in like Toxic Deluge because I was thinking if they are like post board pivoting to a go wide Eldrazi plan, I probably want Deluge. I don't know how effective that plan is, but all right. So no second land, a little bit scary. Opponent also has a little bit of a sketch one. Okay. Fun play. They go for an Urza Saga, and I just consign to stop the ETB trigger to make them, or allow them to make mana off of their Urza Saga. Couple reasons. One, they had this red mana floating here. I didn't really want them to cast like a Goblin Bombardment or an It that Betrays or something here that I just have a little bit of trouble dealing with. If they want to play another egg, that's fine. But I just want to like slow the game down a turn to try to find more land so that I can hold up Counterspell. So this is more of like a time walk consign than anything. Opponent trying to make mana. I've got the Harbinger on top. Decide to leave that there. If I can, if I needed to sack the Flooded Strand and Stern Scolding something or Cling to Dust, I would. But because I didn't have to, I decided to just wait, see what happens. Odawara on top. Okay. Why didn't you fetch up Basic Swamp when you played the Harbinger? Because I'm sitting here looking at Counterspell, Murktide Regent. If they answer my Harbinger, then I'm still just playing Counterspell, whatever. If they don't answer my Harbinger, I get to hold up double Counterspell, but the black mana does not do anything for me. All I care about is the blue mana. So if I don't care about the black mana, I'm not going to get the black mana. And opponent scoops to a Murktide Regent. Nice. Really, really unsure of what was going on there matchup. But that's modern sometimes. Match 3, turn 1, preordained, find a second land. Pretty straightforward. Commercial District, double Bauble. I'm guessing some sort of Delirium deck. Red-green with Bauble. That's kind of the MO. Dragon's Rage Channeler. Vengevine. I will say, they Faithless Looting, played a Hollow One, and then it said paying cost. And I was like, if you have double Hollow One here, get back double Vengevine. You got it. I'm super dead as I'm sitting here staring at this Nihil Spellbomb in my hand like an idiot. But they did not have a second threat, thankfully. So we get to kill this Hollow One, untap with our Nihil Spellbomb, and Counterspell up. And we feel pretty good here. Like, I get to nuke a couple Vengevines. There's a Hollow One. Okay. So, triple Hollow One, double Vengevine on turn 3. Pretty solid. I could have forced one of these Faithless Lootings, which probably wouldn't have been the end of the world. Burning Inquiry flips over a Detective's Phoenix. So, definitely the fun of playing against Hollow One here, right? Sometimes things just don't line up for you. I think our only out is something like a Murktide here. Even then, it's not a great out. And Psychic Frog chump blocks for a turn. All right. Attack in. We get our chump block on. Give ourselves another turn. We are quite a ways from growing the Psychic Frog to tussle with the Hollow One. We've already used our Shoot the Sheriff, so I think outside of a Sink into Stupor, which I only have one left, I don't have any ways of getting the Hollow One off the board. But get to go to game 2. In game 2, we've got more Nihil Spell Bombs, which is kind of the important thing here. Nethergoyf is fine. Usually, if I have the choice in situations like this between, for example, Fatal Pushing the Nethergoyf and getting the Surveil land, I would rather take the line that lets me play out the Frog on an open board. The reasoning being, if they have an answer for my Frog right away, I'm not like giving up a bunch of tempo. I can just untap, play Preordain, hold up Counterspell. If they don't have an answer to my Frog and my Frog gets to live to my turn, then I know I'm going to get to draw a card. I'm going to have Preordain, Counterspell. I could probably find a removal spell or another threat or something and keep applying pressure. But it gives me the best chance of snowballing the game a little bit. It's like here, they don't have an answer to the Frog. I don't really want this Thoughtseize. Opponent waits till we put the draw trigger for the Frog on the stack to play their Bowmaster. Countering the Bowmaster not only because it's going to ping me off the Frog, but because if they untap and have something like a Burning Inquiry, it can be really awkward. Speak of the devil. So I'd rather just not deal with the Bowmaster on the battlefield. Force the Inquiry because I've got a Frog to attack with. This was interesting. So they have a Lightning Bolt, which, yeah, that's fine. But they pointed at me instead of pointing it at the Frog. I think they should have just pointed it at the Frog. Because, like, if you're blocking with this Channeler, you're giving up the Channeler already. So if you point the bolt at the Frog, you make me discard a card to get rid of to save the Frog from the bolt, plus another card to make the Frog larger than the Dragon's Rage Channeler. And if you happen to flip over Delirium, then I lose like my 2 cards for your 2 cards anyway. But my 2 cards are probably, or I lose 3 for your 2 cards. If I but I guess I don't have to discard the second card until I know if your Dragon's Rage Channeler has Delirium or not. But they flip over a Phoenix, which is obviously really good. Does not give them Delirium, though. Or no, it did give them Delirium, but because they pointed the bolt at me, I only have to discard a card to the Frog. I don't have to discard 2. I could have responded to the Channeler or to the bolt with Bowmastering down the Channeler, but I didn't want to tap out if I didn't have to. I want to hold this Bowmaster up, so if they have like a Burning Inquiry on their turn, they're more likely to cast it and I can Bowmaster in response to that and go, hiya. That's the technical term for gotcha. Hiya. Hit you in the face. Spellbomb's fine. Burning Inquiry into my Bowmaster. Decided to just let it go. Take the extra pings. I've got a Lethal Frog, so it's fine. Vengevine, Hollow One, don't care about as long as they don't say flying. Go ahead and show them the push on the Dragon's Rage Channeler, which means I have a Lethal Frog in the air next turn. On to game. Yeah, game number 3. That opener with double Bowmaster and Murktide looks good in theory, but being on the draw, it's a little too slow because if they have like a Burning Inquiry on 1 or 2, I can't interact with it at all. The Burning Inquiry on 1, which I think was actually a really good inquiry for me. Got rid of like Surgical Long Goodbye, found me threats. I can't complain very much. This one, however, I kind of want to keep my Trespasser push around. So we'll stop that one. Have push for this Channeler. Hopefully, Trespasser. So one of the reasons I want to push right then and there instead of waiting is they have the Dragon or the Detective's Phoenix in the yard with Delirium already. So, or I guess Detective's Phoenix is escape evidence, or something evidence. But they have the Channeler on board. They have the Phoenix in the yard already. If I let them go to their turn and they go to escape the Phoenix, then they need a target on board. If I kill the Channeler, there's a chance that they don't have another threat to allow them to cast the Phoenix. And if they don't cast it, then I can untap, play my Trespasser, exile it, and just like get rid of that threat altogether. Which is what we're doing here. Discard another Vengevine. A little bit scary. Hardcast Vengevine from hand. Also of note, they do not have a black source currently. So like Nethergoyf not looking too good. Opposing Bowmasters. Oh, never mind. Scratch that. We'll kill off a Vengevine. Preordained. Bowmaster's like better than a random draw, so I'll take that. And them having a bobble on top's just icing on the cake for this Bowmaster. Would have loved for them to have gone ahead and cracked it, but they didn't. So, yeah. I'm kind of feeling like if they've got an answer to the Bowmaster, I'm in trouble. If they've got a way to get back double Vengevine, I'm in trouble. So I don't really want to like sit back or hold back a chump blocker instead of trying to get the game over with. Okay. This looks like a weird scoop. I'll explain why. Opponent bobbled me at the end of my last turn, so they know the card that I'm drawing this turn. It's an Orcish Bowmaster. So I don't blame them for scooping since they know the Bowmaster's on top. If I attack in with the Orc army and my Orcish Bowmaster, they can't block the Bowmaster because then I just play the new Bowmaster, ping them, grow the army by 1, they take 5, and they die. So they have to block my army token, which means I still get to play the new Bowmaster, ping them, outgrow the Vengevine, and kill it, ping them for 1, have 2 Bowmasters and a big army token. Obviously, they don't know about the Fatal Push, but in a really good position there. I could do something really bad, like play new Bowmaster, ping my own Bowmaster, use the Revolt to Fatal Push the Vengevine, hit them for 5 down to 1. Not worth it, in my opinion. Just save the Fatal Push, but you got lines available to you, I guess. So either way, cool win. On to match number 4. 4 sounds right. I'm taking timestamp notes. All right. Undercity, Otawara. I'm going to keep that because I just want like another land here. As for Sentinel Midnight, first assumption is Hammertime. Get to Spell Snare a Stoneforge Mystic, something I haven't gotten to do in quite a minute. Push off a Sentinel, mainly because I don't want them to have that protection spell here. Whose name I can't remember. Oh, more Sentinels. And a Paladin. And their last card is a Colossus Hammer. Thankfully, we've got the Force Negation for it, but heck of a rollout to have another Sentinel, an Opal, exactly enough mana, Pure Steel plus a Hammer. I could play the Murktide here, and I think that would be a perfectly reasonable play. I'm greedy. I play the Frog because I want to draw cards. So, getting out the Frog. I've got free discard with the Spell Bomb. It's not really doing anything else in the matchup. And I want to up my chances of finding like more counter spells or something. I was a little surprised when they blocked with the Memnite there. It does take them off of Metalcraft. Hit you in the face with some stuff. Mostly that attack is just, I'm assuming they're going to chump block. And it takes them off of a lethal Colossus Hammer. So, yay. I think against Hammertime, like most of your game plan is just trying to limit or mitigate explosive turns. Like, stop things that snowball really heavily and pick and choose like what you can afford to ignore. Hammertime is a lot of ignoring stuff. It's a lot of saying, okay, that card's really good, but you need something in addition to it for me to actually care about that thing. Which is the case a lot of times for cards like Pure Steel Paladin. Like, hey, Pure Steel Paladin's fine. You still need the hammer in addition to that. So unless you're showing me a hammer, I probably don't care about the Pure Steel that much. Sideboarding against Hammertime. Obviously, Deluge here because of like Sanctifier on Vec. Hurkyl's Recall brought in because you can bounce a bunch of hammers in the middle of combat and stuff. It can be a little awkward with Sigarda's aid, but it's a lot better if they're on like Pure Steel Paladin. So with their Stoneforge, they went and got Lava Spur boots, which I was not particularly expecting, but to each their own. trying to clear away the board a little bit just so I could deluge away everything. And yeah, now I'm feeling kind of okay. I've got a couple counter spells. We just need to find a threat of some sort, which Bowmasters kind of. Again, Sigarda's Aid, like, I don't care about the Sigarda's Aid. I care about the hammer. So I'm just going to let the Sigarda's Aid go. Wait for the hammer. Flashing in Bowmaster because I need a clock. I know that there are some X1s in the deck with like Memnite and Esper Sentinel, maybe Inkmoth Nexus that Bowmaster can ping down. But if my opponent is not doing anything, I would rather take the initiative to just be more proactive, try to get the game over with, as opposed to sitting back and like trying to save my Bowmaster for value. Surge of Salvation was the card I was thinking of game one that they could protect something with. Consigned to Memory is fine because it does hit a hammer. Or like the construct making ability off an Urza Saga, stuff like that that could slow the game down really hard. So they're going to equip up a Pure Steel Paladin, which is fine with me because like I'm winning this race. We're both killing in 3, but I get the first shot. I've got Consigned to Memory to answer a hammer. Okay. This is going to look weird, but there's reasoning. Nose itch. There is reasoning behind the madness. I could just consign the hammer and keep going down this path of we're going to hit each other a couple times. Because if they hit me for 3 down to 6, I turn around and hit them for 3. It doesn't matter if they keep the Pure Steel Paladin back to block. I still hit for 2 around the Paladin and kill them. I let them resolve the hammer because of the Pure Steel Paladin draw trigger. So if they mess up and draw their card, I know. Then I create 2 Bowmaster triggers. I can point both the Bowmaster triggers to the Pure Steel Paladin, pay the ward on each one, mark 2 damage on the Pure Steel, and then Hercule's Recall and bounce the hammer and everything back to their hand. And the Pure Steel Paladin would die as a state-based action with the 2 damage marked on it and the hammer bounce back to hand. So they wouldn't have the chance to like replay the hammer, save it, or anything like that. And it would bump my army token up to a 3/3, which means my 3/3 army, my 2/1/1 orcs, is just a lethal attack next turn. So I figured there's a chance they would try to stack their triggers, put the hammer on the paladin, and then draw the card so that they could save their paladin from a couple pings. But they just like skipped the draw altogether. And I said, okay, well, I'm just going to recall everything back to your hand. And then when you replay the hammer, I'll just consign it. Lava Spur, same thing. If they want to draw the card, I'll just ping them upstairs a couple times. It does give them like a chance here if they drew. Let's double check something before I say anything. Yeah, so this is after blocks are declared. I was going to say if... yeah, it does give them a chance to draw a hammer. But they choose just not to draw at all, so we're going to hit them in the face, play a frog. Frog ignores them drawing a hammer anyway, so good talk. On to match number 5. Sandile. Pretty sure Sandile's played. Bunch of Eldrazi, bunch of like Boros energy. This one I was a little bit surprised at that they would knowingly go for the stomping ground. Or no, they didn't. Yeah, they did fetch. They knowingly went for the stomping ground into. I guess I was playing a Bloodstained Mire. Never mind. They're fine. Can't really expect Harbinger of the Seas off of a Bloodstained Mire. But I am able to snipe away that Utopia Sprawl. So if you don't know, Utopia Sprawl does say enchant target forest. So since they got a stomping ground, that becomes an island. Utopia Sprawl falls off. If they had gotten a basic forest, then they'd be able to keep the Utopia Sprawl on it. But either way, Harbinger snipes the Sprawl, shuts off the colorless mana. We play a Frog and Murktide next turn, and they scoop, and we go to game 2. Some sort of an Eldrazi ramp deck. So Consign to Memory, one of the more important cards to bring in. Other than that, I don't really know what their payoff is. There's like 10 different variants of Eldrazi. I think the scariest one for the Frog decks is the ones that ramp into Emrakul the Promised End, just because they've got so many cast triggers with like Sowing Mycospawn, Devourer of Destiny, Emrakul the Promised End. It's just really difficult to keep track of maintaining those decks. Hey, look, a Harbinger. That's got to be pretty okay right now because they don't have the colorless mana to Kozilek's command it down. They do have their basic forest, so they're not like out of it by any stretch of the imagination. I think I brought in exactly one Hurkyl's Recall, and it was mostly just to be able to answer like a talisman. All right, so they kicked a Mycospawn and then didn't get anything. And I don't know why they didn't get anything. I guess that was a misclick and they scooped because of it, but whatever, we'll take it. As soon as I landed the Frog, I think we were in a decent position. So there's your Harbinger soloing a matchup. What do we think of the list? Obviously, main deck's not as explosive or as polarizing as some of the Unearthed Oculus lists. So if you're wanting more of those free wins, then this kind of build probably isn't going to give you that. But what you lose in free wins, you make up for, at least in my opinion, in versatility and stability. You're not as pigeonholed into being the graveyard deck. You're not as reliant on like those unfair explosive starts. You've got a way better ability to kind of grind out wins. You've got more chip plays. When I say chip plays, I mean plays that are like incrementally advantageous over the course of a game instead of all or nothing. Like a lot of times with the Unearthed builds, you play out your Frog on turn 2. Your opponent goes to Fatal Push your Frog. You have to decide right then and there, like, okay, am I discarding my Oculus to try to unearth it next turn? Or am I discarding something else to try to hard cast the Oculus? Am I not doing anything? If you discard the Oculus and then the next turn go to unearth it and your opponent cling to dust your Oculus, or your opponent plays out a Ghost Vacuum, Spell Bomb, whatever, then you just kind of lose everything for one play. You were very all in on that play. It didn't work out. Now your entire game plan falls apart. This build is a lot more like, I'm not going to go all in on anything. I'm going to try to get a little nick in here, little cut here, and hopefully death by 1,000 wounds. It builds up over the course of the match. The sideboard, I didn't see any heavy artifact decks. Like we saw Hammertime, but Hammertime's not like an affinity style artifact deck. So I would like to see a few more of those to try out Hurkyl's Recall before I make a decision one way or the other on it. This did kind of play into my notion on Meltdown, where I don't necessarily think, at least in my opinion, that Meltdown is worth splashing a third color for. I think it's obviously a good card, but I think Hurkyl's Recall for the most part does the same thing while still allowing you to play Harbinger of the Seas and not having to make your mana base more painful. So I'm probably okay with sticking with Hurkyl's Recall at the moment until either more Opal decks pop up or I really feel the need to go Meltdown. But Meltdown missing things like Kappa Cannoneer or just the actual affinity cards, Mirror Enforcer, Frogmite, all that sort of stuff is a little bit concerning. But obviously, Meltdown on like turn 1, 4-0, if you just get to take out Ornithopter, Memnite, Mox Opal, something else, feels great. The problem I've run into with Affinity is a lot of times that's not how your Meltdown on 1 looks. Your Meltdown on 1 takes out like a Frogmite, or not a Frogmite, oh my God, what's the name of I literally just said that, a Memnite, but then misses like the Springleaf Drum they had on 1, or they get an Emery down on 1, or they've got a bobble and they just crack it in response. And you're sitting there like, oh, well, I missed all that cool stuff. But if I wait until turn 2, I run the risk of them having like a 2-drop or a 3-drop or something that I can't hit. And I always just feel like Meltdown's a little bit too far behind. But that's what I got for you. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like I said earlier, if you are enjoying it, feel free to leave a like, maybe even subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe, enjoy some good food and company. I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.